Welcome back to the latest and greatest episode of Real Tech Talk. What you don't know is the analytics are up. The number of people watching are up. The subscriptions are up. But I still need you people. We have to blow this up. I got to tell you, we are getting some of the dopest technologists out there. Our profile is going through the roof. We just actually put out a show also on The Real Deal called The Blueprint. It's getting bigger and bigger. And what's happening with that? We're getting these incredible technologists explaining to us how they're changing the game. And this time we got one of the guys who I was blowing him up, but I am serious. If you ever meet this dude in person, and I haven't met Elon Musk, and I haven't met Jeff Bezos, but this is my Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, my homeboy LD Salmanson of Cherre. You got to check it out. You got to listen intently to what he is saying. He is not for, he is like an acquired taste in understanding how he explains technology into places where it just keeps it so simple and you're like, damn, why didn't I think of that? But making it simple, what is that? That Apple, using architecture to make it look as if something is so simple, but it really is that complicated. He has created something so special. I'm so excited to have him here. So welcome back to Real Tech Talk, the next episode. That's why we're here, bro. This is Real Tech Talk. Boom shakalaka. So who the hell are you, bro? What are you into? What do you do? Yo, you can keep it real here. Tell me about these real estate players.
Eric Brody is the managing principal of CEMVC LLC. All opinions expressed by Eric and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of CEMVC LLC. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Clients of CEMVC LLC may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
All right, welcome to the next episode of Real Tech Talk Podcast. Now, we have a new guy. I'm going to explain him real fast to you guys so you know. And I think it's something important is we're switching the style up a little bit. We can't always go with guys who are seed in A. We need to get to some veterans. And the first thing that is different this week than last week is my haircut. I don't know if you guys noticed. I'm looking quite fly these days, shaving it off. So you are the first podcast person seeing my new style. I hope that excites you, LD.
Sexy.
Very sexy. Thank you so much. So today we have actually was one of the, when I got into the field of technology, one of the godfathers that a lot of the technologists that I would speak to is this young man. His name is LD Salmanson. His company is called Cherre. Now, I'm not even going to try to explain it. And honestly, I went out, I had this, I want to give a quick story about how I met him. So everyone's telling me, yo, you got to meet this guy, LD, the secret, LD, right? So I call him up. He's like, hey, come meet me. I'm like, all right, cool. He's like, you got to meet me at this spot, right? What was the name of it?
I don't know. Where did we meet? Do we go drinking?
Yeah.
Flatiron.
So
yeah,
Flatiron Room, right? You roll up, there's like a line. I get up to the front of it. All I say, I look at the guy, give him a wink. LD. They're like, oh, right this way, sir, right? Come into this dark room, music playing. There's a dude in the corner sitting there in front of like 7 bottles of scotch, right? Scotch?
Yeah, it's the only thing I drink.
And the scotch is lined up when you understand, and he's gonna speak because you have got to hear this young man from the tallest to the shortest, right? I'm like, nah, he doesn't have OCD. He's perfectly normal dude.
Surprised you noticed that, yeah.
What's that? Yeah, so tallest to the shortest. And we had this incredible conversation, and I'm gonna allow him to speak a little bit just about his background. I think the audience would like to know. And then what is Cherre, which is this just monster in the market. So LD, thank you so much for taking some time to come chill with us here. I appreciate you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you got to Cherre.
So I'm sort of Israeli, sort of American. Wherever I am, I'm not that. So
that's good.
Yeah, originally from the States, grew up here in the city, moved to Israel, spent most of my life there, kind of the important part of it, army, stuff like that. I was a captain in the army there. Went to school there, a few too many degrees. Came back to the States after that. Started a few companies in between, sold a few companies in between.
Wait, you were in the city though? You grew up in the city?
Yeah, sort of.
Because that's our shit, is that we're NYC based. We got a real native here,
a lot of back and forth. I don't know what home is. It's part of the shit show of my family life. It's like, am I American? Am I Israeli? And if I'm here in the States, everyone's like, well, you're not really American. You're Israeli. And then Israel's like, well, you're not really Israeli. You're American. It's like, okay, fuck it, right? I don't know where I am.
But let's just, I'm going to establish it right now.
Yeah.
We'll take you.
We'll
I'll take you
yeah.
any fucking day, dude.
So-
I'll take you.
I would joke with friends here that I grew up with, and it was like, well, you were born in Providence, so you'll never be a New Yorker, right? And like, okay, so like
Rhode Island.
you 4 months you missed, you're fucked. You're never.
Oh,
a New
that's
Yorker,
it.
right?
Yeah.
That's it.
You're like,
done,
and that was my fault.
And of course, now I live in Westchester or some shit like that, right? So they're pretending to be New Yorkers, right? That's like upstate New York or some shit like that, right? But yeah, I guess essentially a New Yorker, it doesn't really leave you. So the hustle definitely came from here. But then Israel, a lot of part of that in the middle, started a company that we ended up rolling into CompuByte in Israel in the IT services space.
Wait, but let's start a little slower because our audience are not always tech-based. What we're trying to say is like, how do we teach the non-tech-based audience about some of these technologists? And I even said, and I predicated earlier, I was like, these guys are some of the smartest people, right? What does everyone want to be from MIT, from any of the greatest schools? They want to be Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and now LD Salmanson, right? So tell us a little bit how...
Put me in a good crowd there.
Well, you
yeah,
know,
thanks,
look at that.
yeah.
I went,
I'll
you saw
take
how
it.
I did that?
I'll
Boom,
take
boom,
it.
boom,
Yeah,
right? That's
I'm
how we
just
work.
slightly more autistic than Elon, yeah. We gotta get some weed here to make it work, yeah.
Oh, that would... And I don't, do you think that would help you?
Probably not.
Next
but yeah.
time we're getting trees.
Probably not.
All right, so you how did you though go from, you know, back and forth nomad to technology? Like what was so interesting to you about the
It was
space?
completely by accident. There was like no fucking plan. So Ben and I, my co-founder, we've done all these things together over the years. So we used to watch Star Trek on Wednesday night or Wednesday afternoon on Middle East TV in Israel. Like it was like 3 fucking channels, and that was one of them, right? And it was at like 2:00, and we had to go fix some computer because some family member asked me, rung me in to go fix that shit. So,
But you knew about them? You were playing with computers at a
we were
young
just,
age?
Yeah, just messing around, and I grew up in a house that had a computer, right? So I know I was born in '82, so I'm 40. But you'd think that that's like no, I grew up in a house that had a computer from the very first day.
Commodore 64?
No, my first was actually an IBM computer. I did have a Commodore. I also had an Atari.
Gateway?
No, I had a 64.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then I had the Atari 4000 series, then a 5000 series, and then kind of Nintendo.
So you were tinkering with them.
Yeah, we're just fucking around. Like, we're just
Why do
having
you think
fun.
that your brain wanted to know what was behind the screen?
So my mother tells the story differently. She said I used to like break that shit, and she got tired of calling someone to fix it, and she's like, deal with it yourself. And it was like, okay, so I dealt with it myself, right? I won't play shit, right? I don't think there was some plan behind any of this. And then, so Ben and I went to fix some family members, friends' computer. On the way out, they're like, well, how much do we pay you? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it didn't cost us anything to fix it. They're like, no, we want to give you something. I'm like, shit, we can get paid for this? They're like, fuck, the hustle just, immediately kind of drove in. Then like,
How old were you?
14, 13, somewhere like 7th grade. We don't know exactly how old I was. And then like the next day, their neighbors were like, we heard you fixed like the Stevenson's computer. Like, how much do you charge an hour? And I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Like about $130. I'm like, fuck yeah, right? So that became the business, and we started fixing computers.
And you were paying your taxes, obviously. This wasn't cash.
No,
right?
we're all cash, yeah. we literally got fired from a client once for literally paying taxes. That's a funny story for another time. But yeah, so we started fixing computers, and then it started becoming like small home offices, law firms, accounting firms, and eventually started kind of doing some bigger stuff around that. Early days of web development, so we started building like websites. Again, 90s when websites was cool.
And that's like website 1.0, where it's just data up on the screen, right?
It had some images, right? So this is the time where kind of we were going from Internet Explorer kind of 2 into 3 and Netscape into 2 into 3. And the 3 series of both those browsers were kind of more graphical oriented.
Which is Web 2.0, right?
Yeah,
Look at me
I never
dropping
understand.
knowledge right
I never
now. Look at
understand
me.
those acronyms to me. Like I know like Web 2 is supposed to reflect this world of like social platforms.
Right, where
or-
there's interfacing with it, right?
I don't know,
Where
it
it's
never
actually
meant anything to me, right? I mean, to me, like the delineation is different. It's like we went from like directories,
Right.
and then we went into Google kind of search platforms or Lycos or web crawlers, kind of the earlier days of that were more kind of ranked kind of search. So retrieving information in a way that makes sense. And by the way, that's still kind of where we are today.
Okay.
I don't really understand this Web3 nonsense. To me, kind of it's just, I still don't have a use case. I don't think the word Web3 represents anything real. I get the idea of let's have distributed ledgers. It's a pretty cool technology. Don't know a use case of it. Maybe
What's a distributed ledger?
distributed ledger is just a fancy way of saying I can store information. Remember Napster and shit like that?
Yeah.
So that's also essentially a type of distributed ledger, right? So instead of me just going to one centralized server and I just go pick the song I wanted to listen to
And then
from
you
there,
download it.
yeah, so I would have that song distributed across every other user of Napster at the same time. So I get pieces of that song from everyone at the same time, right?
Okay.
So that's essentially a distributed ledger. But it wasn't a cryptographic distributed ledger, meaning I could go to anyone, I could see that specific part of the song, and it wasn't kind of hashed essentially, right?
Gotcha.
But from non-technical, it wasn't like scrambled, right? I could see the exact words, right? Whereas not Bitcoin, but cryptographic ledgers, right? And blockchain is kind of the code word for those. Is I can now have this ledger distributed across multiple different places at the same time in a way that nobody can piece it back together.
Or rob you, or who the owner is,
so that
right?
can be used for currency, right? But again, we have a lot
let's
of
get back
currencies,
to the origin story. So now you're obviously, as a result of your mother, who we should thank, she's making you learn about computers. You start this business. So what was the first one where you got in, and where was it?
It was just random family. We literally just got called up, to go fix the family's computer.
So that was business one.
Yeah,
your
so that was
first
business
tech
one.
business. What was two?
Two, I helped spin off. So I didn't actually found that business, but Ben, another friend of mine, helped build that business out of London, and then I helped spin that out. Company recently sold to Bullhorn, but at the time it was part of Vista Equity, and now it's part of Insight Ventures. That was HR Data, right? So they had a staffing agency for kind of low-cost employees with very low margins, but in places where there was really regulated, right? So like think of like airports or train industry, which is like the big part, like London Overground. And being able to track where those employees are in real time, how long it takes them to go back and forth to the office and things like that was really, really, and they have the certification to be where they're supposed to be. And then London Olympics in 2012 was that big contract, and then that software was spun out of that.
Wait, you got your big contract was they were like, all right, you're going to do this for the entire Olympics?
Not for the entire Olympics, for part of the Olympics. Olympics is a big thing, a lot of contracts there. But
but you created the software that was able to track specifically because they're being onboarded and being saying it's okay to track us.
I don't create anything. I take credit for people, right? So Ben did everything. I get to take credit for it, or Ben and Elad was with him there. So I just get to take credit for all their shit. And that's probably true of Cherre today, right? my role is to like sound smart for other people to do all the hard work, and I get to take credit for it. That's more or less my role.
What do we say? Everything is a compliment, right? Everyone has a position to play. You
Mine's
think me here
credit,
at Real Tech Talk, like I have some decent charisma behind the camera. Am I making technology? No. So I hear you, bro. It's all
I'm just
good.
here to take credit. But yeah, so that platform was really cool.
How old were you at that point?
2011, 12, so 20? No, 30, sorry.
Right.
Yeah, bad calculation.
So 30 years old, you're now full-time creating your first business in London.
Well, actually, this is our second business.
Right.
And I didn't create
did the other one, would the other one last that long? Where you were actually...
No, that one sold in 99. That merged into another company, and then I went to the Army, and this is after the Army. I went to law school, did some other random things. And then
the tech
I joined
pulled you back
them
in.
to help spin that off. And then I went to Wharton, and then while at school...
Oh, wait. So you finished that one. It sells that company, the London-based one, in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And you're like, now what?
So
you start applying to business
I thought I was going to
schools?
retire, right? In my mind, I was retired. And apparently, when you tell people you're retired at 29, that doesn't work so well. That's how I know. Yeah, I was 29, so that's how I know that age. And then he said, well, I'll just go to Wharton. And you're like, yeah, you kind of apply and shit and get in. Like, yeah, I'll do that. And it wasn't like some hubris. It was like, I had no fucking clue what it meant to get into these schools, right? So I had to do the GMAT really quickly and write these stupid essays,
But you did well.
Yeah,
You inherently, there's a part of your brain that gets that done, right?
Yeah, I'm not an idiot, right? I just don't do anything meaningful in life, right?
But I play one on TV, no? Because in reality, we know you're not,
job,
you know?
And then, I'm a Joseph Wharton Merit Scholar, too, at Wharton. So
What is it?
Joseph Wharton Merit Scholar.
What's that?
It means that they pay for school because they think you're good and that you'll be successful.
Okay.
So
Does that mean you now have to give them money from the company?
yeah, not directly for the company, but it means they hit you up pretty regularly for money. But yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so I got that. I started a company while in school there.
What company?
In late stage private equity data. So we had this core challenge at financial services, which is public markets, lots of data, everybody trades it kind of programmatically. But then in the private market...
Wait, let's just break it down. So there's public data out there with which people are paying for, no?
Yeah, so think like companies like Bloomberg and Capital IQ, right? Those companies, just shitloads of data that people trade. And there's all this alternative data, right? So
And then they're what are they creating to review that data to make decisions?
they're building models, right? So
they create an algorithm or a math model.
Yeah, those are the more sophisticated ones, but in the most basic sense, they're just trying to predict where stocks are going in kind of basic models. Are we going to overperform estimates, underperform estimates, things like that?
But it's a human.
In the beginning, it's humans. And then you have these companies like, Two Sigma and Rentec, like Renaissance, those firms, D-Shaw, that just build really complicated programmatic models, right?
And it was Was it true? Was it true that they were making better decisions based on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just look at the returns, right? Renaissance has killed the market for,
So that was proving
years.
tech was beating, not beating
absolutely.
the human, but I'm saying getting insights from the data.
If humans are picking stock and you're putting money in that human, you're a moron, and the person picking stocks is a moron. Those guys will never make money, ever. They're incapable of processing the amount of data that is processed by algorithms. So
Why, can I ask you just because I just read this article, why was finance so down to give out all the data up? Why were they so like...
I don't think it was down. It just happened, right? So Bloomberg started collecting ticker data, right? So everybody had end of day, close, and opening data. And then Bloomberg and some other folks started collecting intraday trading. So what's going on during the day? And then other firms
like volume of trade,
just everything. Like what are the bid-ask spreads at every given interval? It started off.
And how did they get it?
They were just standing there and passing the data back. They were like they're standing on the floor and writing it down and putting it on the wire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now that I have intraday data, I can start building algorithms that are not just once a day, right? They're taking into account the data that's running all day. And more data like that starts pumping through systems around bond prices, FX prices, right? So the data
and then
is just
these guys are reacting to it.
Yeah, and that's all public data by default, right? So it isn't some secret that one fund has and others don't.
Okay.
But that started evolving. Once everybody has that data, people start buying alternative data, right? Demographic data, sentiment data, things like that.
And then there's money in that game, hence Bloomberg being what it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, but the hedge funds are killing it, right? So they'll have people calling all day, like the Apple stores. Well, how many iPhone 3s do you have in stock? Well, I got 2 left, right? And I know you got 100 in the beginning of the month, so I know you sold 97. So I'll collect that from a certain number of stores, and I'll get a sense of how Apple might perform in the market at the end of the month, above or below certain
So now you're in
expectations.
Wharton, supposedly chilling. We're supposed to be in grad school, right?
I was chilling. I waved the whole
what?
core. I was there to have fun. I interviewed in the summer for like banks and consulting firms, and I got some offers. And I was sitting there going, I don't want to do any of that shit.
Yeah.
But then you got to do something in the summer. Then I met this firm that had a pretty cool idea. I wanted to buy secondaries in Facebook, right? That was kind of where I was at. I wanted to put about $1 million with some friends into Facebook shares. And we couldn't.
You were going to just trade Facebook.
We just wanted to buy Facebook when it was private, right? We thought, this thing's
when it was private.
Yeah.
Which means you need access. It's not like all of us can just.
Yeah, but it's not. In my mind, it wasn't supposed to be that complicated, right? You just find how hard is it to get $1 million worth of shares of a private company? Just go and ask some money, and somebody's got to sell, right? You may pay a little over market, but it's gonna go public in a few years. I don't give a shit, right?
Right.
So that was kind of the thought, and then I couldn't find anyone to sell it. Right, to your point just now, I was like, wait, if I can't buy $1 million worth of shares, what's going to happen to all these public entities like Fidelity, T. Rowe? Like, these folks, if they don't buy those shares as they go into the public market, if they don't get their allocation IPO, because they're a long short fund and they're benchmarked versus like the S&P or something like that, anything that you don't have weighted for the market, you're essentially shorting.
So they need to buy it in that moment.
They have to buy it at the IPO, and they have to buy a little more
access.
after.
It was the access that you
Yeah,
were
'cause
like.
there's only
you're
certain
like,
amount of
I can't get
allocation.
access. How come? How are they going to get access?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
they'll get their allocation, right? All these funds have to get some allocation to the IPO, but they're not going to get the
and
full
who
allocation.
does that? The investment bank says,
Yeah, the
okay,
investment
Bob
bank.
gets some, Jimmy gets some, this company, that whatever the relationships
Whatever
and
your
rapport
pricing
they have.
and the pricing, right? Who's bidding up there will get some more allocation. Right? I'll put in how much I want at what price, right? And then bidding happens. So now when a company goes public, I'm now underweighted based on, let's say, the S&P. So I have to buy those shares in the aftermarket at a premium for that to just get to basically the benchmark.
To keep the same.
Yeah. Now, if I could buy that in the private market, I'm buying at a discount. So I'm buying at a lower price than what it's going to go public at. So there's a little alpha to be made there, but I'm definitely getting my allocation, right?
Well, it's only alpha if it hit the public market and went up, and we're seeing PropTech stocks
Over
hit the
time.
market and go down, right?
Yeah, but that's, again, a lot of these are SPACs too, right? And also, I don't want to look at an 18-month period in the middle of COVID, right? Give me a 5-10 year outlook, and then we'll have that conversation, right?
Okay.
And over 5-10 years, these things typically trend up in public markets, even net of inflation. And if you're bullish on technology stocks, which I've always have been, especially these types of technology stocks, then it really doesn't matter.
So you were already, so I guess Wharton in that moment is talking about tech, and that's why you have some kind of interest. And I mean, you obviously are coming from a background in computer.
Wharton's the finance school. Like that's like it's the first business school, the first finance people. So most of my class is going into banking, private equity, hedge funds, consulting. Just like a small contingency it's going to tech. It's changed today, by the way. Now like 30-40% of the class goes into tech. But
Okay.
at the time that wasn't the case. And I just wanted to buy shares on Facebook. It was a completely financial thing.
Yeah.
And then if I couldn't find to do that, I'm like, okay, this problem's real. And I found this firm that was kind of dabbling with that kind of area.
Trying to solve for it.
Trying to solve it. Then we started this company out of Knight Capital. Knight Capital at the time was the largest market maker in the world. They seeded us. We were literally sitting in their offices. And Knight Capital went through a trading glitch in 2012, August 1st, Wednesday. Really fucked it up, lost a lot of money in a really short period of time with a trading glitch. One of the flash crashes that happened, that was that. And the company within a week was completely bankrupt, restructured, and built again. So it merged with this company called Virtu Group. Goldman Sachs and Jefferies just
Wait, besides telling me the history, but what did you see? What was so you go? So you're saying your second company was I'm gonna find dope tech stocks. I'm gonna raise capital. I'm gonna invest in them. Not creating a tech company, but investing in the companies that
I was gonna build Renaissance for private companies, right?
What's Renaissance?
That Jim Simons, that algorithmic trading philosophy of public markets, but for the private. There's enough data.
Oh, for the private, right? So you're like,
data,
I'm gonna find it's non-Bloomberg private information. I'm gonna do the same thing.
The exact same thing. It's none of my ideas are ever original. It was just execution, right? So if we can get the data of what they raised at their last price from the Form D filings in Delaware, if we get a sense of how many employees they have, what type of employees, where are they moving in the market there. Who are they selling to? Who are their clients, right? If I know
was the tech getting that data faster?
Yeah, so we were collecting that data. A lot of it was manual too, but a lot of tech automating that process.
Or some, right? Some automation.
You start manual, and then it starts semi-automated, and eventually everything's completely automated. And then we're just sitting on algorithms, basically. They're just making these investments. And then as part of that snafu, Oppenheimer acquired us, and then we were doing the same thing out of Oppenheimer.
So they find you.
Yeah.
And then you exit with them.
Yeah, and then we sold Oppenheimer.
So now you have a name. You're like, yo, he just came out of war and he did this, right? So then what? So now again, you're back to, I think I'm retiring.
No, I wasn't retired.
No, this one we're not retiring now.
No,
okay.
I had a really good time at Oppenheimer. They were really good to me. They're a great bank. Not as good as maybe they promised when during the acquisition, but still, they were good to us. I really wanted to do the same thing for real estate. So I saw that.
Now we're getting down to real tech talk.
Yeah,
so what did you see? What was the problem that you're seeing in real estate?
It hasn't changed, by the way, but when we came in 2016 to look at the problem, nobody was selling data. Everybody was selling applications, right? So companies like RCA and Trep and Comstack and Reese and CoStar, none of these companies sold data. They sold an application that had data.
They said, an application that you would log into.
Yeah.
And they were aggregating data of just finding a single place to find out about lot area or what something traded at, right? Yeah. And where are they getting those data points from?
Each one has their own system, but a lot of them, I think CoStar is probably the best at this, together with RCA and Reese. They have just people calling and just really working.
So still phones. That human factor, not where you were saying we were starting to scrape data on, for private markets.
CoStar is like a behemoth, right? So they have some of that data is coming from the Auction 10X platform for bidding. Some of that's coming from their apartments.com.
But it's not pure. It's not everything.
No, a lot of that's just manual research, and that's why CoStar has such good data. I mean, again, people can argue. We can talk shit about any vendor if you want to, but the good data is there because they're collecting proprietary data that nobody else has, right? And when we saw that, it's like, okay, this looks like financial services in the 80s and 90s, right? The ticker data is fragmented.
So it's Bloomberg for real estate.
But Bloomberg didn't even exist for this market, right? So you have these mini
agreed. But you're saying, okay, they're trying to fill that position. And you're saying back in the day, I was able to find a business sort of under what they were doing or using that information differently.
Yeah, we saw a really fragmented industry, right? It's fragmented by asset class, by geography, by investment strategy, by capital stack, right? And it's not just these third-party data vendors. A lot of this data sits in my internal systems. It's in my Yardi, MRI, RealPage, VTS, and some of these companies didn't even exist when we started looking at the problem. So I have to find a way to take all that third-party market data that's right now trapped in applications and get them to sell it in data, get them to put that in.
Sell the raw data, basically, right? They're not really looking at it or doing anything.
Exactly.
Give it all to you.
And not give it to us, right? We facilitate that for the clients, right? And then being able for us to connect all that data and give it to the clients in a way that they can now connect their internal and external data, right? So it's the first time I can say, I know every single property in the world. When it comes on the market, that's just a change of status. I already know everything about that. I just know that now it wasn't on the market. Now it is on the market. Maybe I got a little more information from the OM or something, but generally—
What's the acronym?
The offering memorandum, right? So
what the broker's using to sell it.
Yeah, exactly. The teaser doc or something. But usually I should know most of that information. And I have all my internal information. I'm Starwood. I already have, a shit ton of buildings in this area here, right? I know what rent, leases are like. I know what I'm spending on these certain OpEx, right? So I should have an opinion about every one of these buildings. And the fact that I made it on the market is just, it's an opportunity now, right? And I should be able to reach out to these opportunities when they're off market as well. And the same thing should be able to happen at the asset management side of the house. I shouldn't be able to say, well, I'm getting all these submissions manually from all these managers, and then I have an accounting firm going to do all these notes manually. And then if I asked you how are we doing versus your underwriting, you have no clue. That's a different part of the house. If I asked you how are you doing versus benchmarks, I have no clue again. And I only answer these things once a month or once a quarter on some cadence.
Guys, It is my great, great, great pleasure to tell you we have our first sponsor. When we started, we didn't have a sponsor. We couldn't tag our sponsor. We had nowhere to go. But today we do have a sponsor, an incredible venture capital firm run by some incredible people called Annex Ventures. So this is the first episode sponsored by Annex Ventures. Go check them out and stay tuned because they got some cool shit in the hopper with what they're doing. Annex Ventures. Now, by the way, they don't have that tagline. I was just making it up. And maybe they wouldn't even want me to say that. You know, maybe they have a cool like hip hop rap about it. But for me, Annex Ventures, thank you so much. Who owns Annex Ventures?
That's the joke.
Oh, shit, I own Annex Ventures. That's the joke. You know, I'm here with my producers, and they're like, you got to finish it, right? Your audience doesn't know. Annex Ventures is sponsored by yours truly, my partners and I, E-Breeze, E-Bizzle, Eric Brody, and, you know, check them out, too, because they're doing cool shit also. Oh, by the way, if you were in town recently, you would have seen that Eric Brody was at the RETCon conference, and I was a moderator. So if you ever see me there, you're watching the podcast, you better come and say hello. Actually, I demand that you come and say hello. Couple months, we're going to be on PropTech, hopefully. We're trying to lobby them to get us on there. We got the second episode of the Blueprint coming out. We're blowing up over here, people. Get on the train, join the ride. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. See you in hell. So you buy the data from these companies that it's stored. It's there. It's just not being useful.
Yeah.
You take your client's data, right? Also, right?
Yeah.
You try to put it into a place where they can now use it efficiently to make better decisions.
Exactly. Per client. We don't share the information between clients ever.
Right. So per client. But let me ask you, I was just reading recently when they're talking about big data, right? And big data is cloud-based information, picking up millions of data points all the time. And that's when it starts to really work and like you can really get insights. Is this yet big data, or is this like trying to get to big data status, but better than what's available?
It's a funny question. So we're sitting on the largest real estate knowledge graph in the world by far, by orders of magnitude, right? And I wouldn't necessarily consider this big data, right? So in my mind, big data is either it doesn't fit in memory, right? And we're there. So in that sense, we are technically big data. And the second thing I would say is if the data is moving so fast that I can't say, okay, what's the average? Because by the time I'm done calculating the average, new data came in and the average is no longer relevant, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have a frequency problem here. Everything's slow in real estate. The fastest client I have wants data every 15 minutes, right? And that's considered real time in their world, right? Okay. Maybe some of the access control is real time, but that's about it, right? So it's big data in the sense that it no longer fits in memory and you have to use some tools to be able to handle the data, but it isn't really, really fast data. So yes, technically it would qualify as big data, but small big data maybe or something like that. So
you're a data aggregator.
Yeah, we're data aggregator, processor, and manager. Right?
But you're processing that data, but you're not processing data for them to get information about it, whoever your clients are. You're like a warehouse of data, of your client's data, and then you're putting it into ways in which they can understand it for like the human?
Exactly. So think of, an asset manager is trying to answer what do they own, where do they own it, how is it performing? So that means I have to get all my internal data from, Yardi, from ERP, CRM, deal systems, debt systems, and have that speak to each other.
Right.
I have to get all the third-party data about the market, about rents, about properties, et cetera. And then I want to be able to see typically dashboards, right? Mm-hmm. I want to be able to say how am I performing versus all these things, so worlds of dashboards. But then my data science team wants to build really cool algorithms. So they want all that data sitting in all those cool dashboards, but as connected data so they can go build really cool things.
So they want to have an actual API to it, right?
And that's the core. That's what we do really well.
And you're not making any decisions yet or giving them any insights. You're like, here, we've done it. We've made it neat for you and clean. Well, I remember yesterday on LinkedIn, you popped something that was pretty dope. I saw a bunch of comments on it just about affordable housing in the United States, like in a snap of a finger, right? Was that what the graph was?
Yeah, it was. Kind of a map of how fucked up it is right now. But I would say we're just starting to get in that insight stage because, again, back to the Two Sigma adage, first thing, start the ticker, right? So we started the ticker, and again, the ticker here is fragmented, so connected ticker. Then connect the internal data because that data is really valuable. Then what's called feature engineering, right? So when I think about building a model, there's the first 80% or 70% part is collecting and connecting the data. Then the next kind of 20% part is from these millions of data points, how do I create a feature, right? So I might have a table which has prices or transactions. I have another feature, but what I really want to say is what's the last sold price?
Right.
And that's not just readily available. And I want a feature that might say, and feature is just a fancy word of these elements that's in the model, right? So AX plus B, like each one of those is a feature, right?
Right, I got you.
So
a variable
I want
within
to create
the calc.
those features, right? And then if I have all these features ready, now the modeling part becomes really easy. So we do everything up to the model and we give that to clients. And then we're now working on the models. And we have
And then
models that are
I guess like what's super relevant is like now you have to get people to interface daily with Cherre, right? I mean, that is this, by the way, the name of the company is Cherre, right? What you just described in this aggregator is Cherre. And now you're like, how do I keep driving traffic to Cherre so that people continually interface with it, right?
Yeah.
And now tell us just briefly,
clients.
because my audience wants to know the following 2 points. So one was like, how is it going? You know, like they just want to know how Cherre is in the marketplace, right? In general, like, are you expanding? Is it turns out it works. Is it running really well, right? And I know you're not seed in A, so it's not as relevant. I'd love to just hear like how you're doing. And then second, I want to ask you some questions about the market, right? Because if I have like one of the smartest guys in the room who can just, the GMAT, of which I couldn't, and, create these companies, I'd love to hear what some of your insights are of what you see the future of the real estate market. All right, so first, how is Cherre doing just in general, right? The markets have changed.
No, we've been killing it. We just had a record quarter, so clearly that's not an issue. We've been growing 2.5, 3x every year since we started, so we've been growing really fast generally.
And do you think that's because these companies that are involved go, we know this model, it's Bloomberg, right? And we know where this goes, right? Is that like
You'd
why
think
they
it'd be
still...
that easy, right? It's not actually. Now it's easier, but when we first started, we said, hey, you can use data to make better decisions. And the response from the market was, no, we're really good at making decisions.
Of course, man. Ego, bro.
And you
Slay
think
the
like,
ego.
just look at what's going on in financial services. Like, this is what's happening.
Yeah,
like,
it's already been proven over here,
like,
right?
Assume you're brilliant. You want to get steroids, right? Why would you be sitting around and going like, oh, fuck, I can make all the best decisions? Like,
Technically, I want TRT, not steroids, but whatever. It's neither here nor there.
I'm not in the gym enough, yeah. But it was rough. And it was also hard because none of these data vendors sold data at the time, right? Now it's obvious to everyone,
That
right?
was interesting. Did you go in there and make those channels with them?
Yes.
Where you were like, yo, I
Yeah.
want this. And then you have to make it so that they can't then figure out what you're doing and sell it, right? You got to make some kind of agreement with them,
I think
right?
they wanted to sell data, some of them at least. I mean, I can't think we can take credit for some of them for sure, but I don't think for all of them. I think they wanted to sell data. I think the fear was, how do we sell data in a way that nobody can infringe on our IP rights, right? So we had to show a way where, hey, we can take your data, pre-connect it to
And
Cherre,
IP, you're saying intellectual property?
and sell that to the clients in a way that never screws you, right? We're not here to fuck you. We're here to make more money for you. We're going to open new markets, new opportunities.
And I need the data. And you're the one going to get it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not getting that data. And you're
Exactly.
saying I'm not interested in collecting that
and I don't want to
data,
replace
right?
you. Like, I'm never here to replace you. Like, I'm not here to replace CoStar, Trep, or RSA. You all do really good job. Great. Continue good job. I'm going to make more money for you, right? And so long as I'm never in competition with them, that allows me to be a channel for them. And the clients, you have to go and convince them, hey, you're going to have to pay more money for the same data you've been getting up until now in that shit application. Not shit, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now you get it in a raw data format. You can do anything you want with it. You still might get the application because your business here doesn't know what to do with the data.
And
right?
though what you're bringing it into a framework that they can understand. It's not, if you've ever been on CoStar or the rest of it, they're not bringing it together and making it so that you as human can understand the flow of the data and stuff,
but
right?
CoStar doesn't have access to your internal Yardi and VTS data, right? And they don't have access to their competitor data sets that run, RCA and Reese, et cetera, right? So I think those companies do a really good job with their own internal data. I think where they fall short is the fact they can only see their own internal data.
Right.
There's only so much analytics I can get from that kind of narrow view of the world. So,
Right, which then goes back to these other industries. When you can collect all of it, there's different insights, right?
exactly.
And that your insights will inherently be wrong if you don't have it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's something you're missing.
Yeah.
So now tell us, look, we're seeing a following. And I'd love to just get a couple like ideas from you. PropTech trying to go public, getting rocked, right? These SPACs, just getting rocked in the market, right? The markets are, not as stable when it comes to real estate. And this is what I want to know. What do you think the next couple years in CRE-tech, PropTech, construction, like what do you see, because you're out there, do you think that these technologies get incorporated more and like we've now hit a tipping point, like theoretically, or do you think that like, no, we're going to get beat up again, a couple of us are going to win, but like we're not fully embraced? Like what do you think the future holds for us?
It's a good question. I mean, we're not really the classic PropTech company. We're, a data infrastructure company that happens to be in this sector, right? So
no, I agree, but you are also at Retcon and CRE-tech with me.
Yeah,
you see
true.
everybody else. So,
true, but
know?
I mean, it just puts me in a kind of slightly different lens. I think most of those companies that SPAC should have never SPAC'd. And I mean, SPAC was like cheating in my mind. It's like, how do I go public without having any of the benchmarks that would typically be required to go public?
Gotcha.
And then the public market's like, oh, this is absolute shit. And then they're just shitting.
So they get rocked, and then you get bad name in tech, right?
Like,
now we're getting like beat up.
It's also like the worst incentive. Like it was VCs taking their own companies public through SPACs, right, with bad incentives. It was just really, really messed up. And it was like, oh, we have a year lock-in. Yeah, that's not shit. Like, and at the end of the year, they all sold, right? So, and that's why they all got wrecked too. So, and there's some exceptions that I think might do okay, but the vast majority of them should have never been public. They weren't ready for public companies. Like if you haven't had, 4 to 6 quarters in a row where you can, look like a public company, you're reporting earnings, like a public company, you can predict your cash flow. None of these companies.
Well, let's talk
had
then ground floor. You're seeing these technology companies, right? Is there a future for these prop tech and construction tech to disrupt what we're doing today?
There's no question. I mean, software is eating the world. The old adage that hasn't changed. Software is still eating the world. It's eating the world at a faster pace, right? And real estate's a slower industry to adopt for many reasons.
Yeah, why?
So one is we're Luddites, right? We're the people who are so risk averse. We have to hold the fucking building, right? So like we're the last people to adopt anything,
what
right?
do we call that? Laggards?
We're idiots, right? We're just literally idiots. We're risk averse for everything, right? And then the flip side is we're not actually idiots, because when the entire market of this technology was coming up in the 90s, then .com bust, and we're like, okay, we're not going to put some money in that right now. And then 01, we had 9/11, which decimated the market here in New York, and we went into a recession to 02, 03. Then 08, 09 really fucked this market specifically. So all these companies that we're seeing now really came out of like 2011, 12 cohorts, and most of them not until like 15, 16, right? So this is a new industry for this industry. And I think that a good thing about the real estate industry is we're allergic to bullshit. And if you add real value, I'm all in. But if you're coming to talk, like, fuck off, right? Come back when you add real value. But if you add real value, not only will I be part of this and deploy technology, I'll invest. I'll do anything I can to make this company successful, right?
Interesting.
And I think that we've, as in the PropTech community generally, just done a shitty job at adding value for operators.
Or explaining, right? Hence
that's
this
my
real
problem.
tech talk, right? Like explaining the value that you've added in a way that the real estate guys can understand, right?
Many just don't add value, or they're a point solution that doesn't work on its own and should be part of some bigger company. So again, I'm not trying to blame the operators who are doing a good job innovating, but I think a lot of them are short-sighted. It's a lot of people from within the industry who are at the core are real estate people, not technologists, who think really small, have never built companies in their lives. And it's like, okay, I built something really, really cool. What is it? 15th tenant experience app. It's like, okay, and what do I do with it? Well, you can get food and you can go see, when the subway comes, and like, I can use Seamless Grubhub. Yeah, great. Can I go check the subway on something? What the fuck do I need to go 13 clicks to go hit the light switch, right? It's like, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to somebody on the inside who just doesn't know how the real world works. And those solutions need to die. And then you have really, really cool companies that are doing really, really innovative things, right? I mean, I can spit off some cool names. Like, I think VTS has done a really, really great job at automating the leasing process. Are they expensive? Yeah, that's other
For
people.
my audience, still too big. They don't need my money.
Yeah, but I think they did some really cool things. I think Procore did a really amazing job on the construction and project management side. They also acquired a lot of cool companies. I think Map's a really, really young company.
So you're optimistic.
Yeah, I think there's some really,
you
really
think
cool
that
companies.
Eventually keeps eating it up, and that there's tons of opportunities in the space.
If you look at any building, if you look at any fund today versus 5 years ago, they've already implemented a shitload of technology, which is core to their day-to-day operations. Everybody has a data strategy.
Aging out? Is that like we're 40, we're getting older, and we were a part of it? Is that aging out the guys that were resisting?
Maybe it's part of that. I think it's more of the 80-year-olds who are dying off, right? Because I don't need to tell you, real estate's like a lot of 80-year-olds who still kind of you go to an investment committee, and it's just one scion of the family who's been there for like forever, and his father and his grandfather, right? So like those big families are aging out, and the younger generation is definitely more savvy. But I don't think it's that alone. I think it's more back to the point earlier, which is these companies can show ROI. They can show that today they add value and they can deploy fast, and they understand the industry, and there's more of an appetite to take risk in technologies. I think it's a lot of those things together.
I mean, we need that. I mean, that's one of the reasons we started Real Tech Talk, was how we can explain to the guys that are the laggards, or however, who you are. We could explain to them how it is changing and check out these values and where we can show it. So it was awesome to have you to have like it's funny, at 40 years old, you're like the industry veteran who is changing the game. He's at 40 years old talking about driving M3s around the city with small tires and big rims. So look, I appreciate you coming in, taking the time to sit with us. I mean, it's always fresh to be able to talk to some of the guys that are really getting it done. And hopefully the audience totally understands and resonates and listens, because this guy is like, what'd we say? We got Bezos, we got Musk, we got LD. Oh, last question. What does LD stand for?
It stands for the great book, East of Eden by Steinbeck. There's a line where it goes, if your kid has a nickname, your parents named him wrong. It's clear that my parents named me wrong. It stands for Leonard Daniel. Leonard was my grandfather, who I never met. Daniel is the name my mother wanted me to be called.
And then how did it get to LD, though? Because Leonard works, Lenny works, right?
Well, that was her nightmare of me being calling like Lenny, and just like the Lenny and Squiggy. But it was like, okay, we'll call him LD until you get your shit together, when I was like a few days old.
Yep.
And they divorced.
And then it stuck. There it is.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks a million. I really appreciate you coming through. Appreciate
Thanks for
you,
having
big
me.
dog. Of
Good
course.
being here.
You got it. In addition, you better listen at the end of what he has to say as to where this industry is headed. He is bullish on what's happening. The market's all over the place. Real estate, all over the place. Interest rates, up. But he said something I think we all have to really understand and be clear. Software is eating the world. It is coming out of every space, every angle. And the second thing that he said is that real estate guys, dumb and smart at the same time, right? Don't jump on the latest fad. You got to show them the ROI, return on investment, ROI. But in order to do that, you actually have to really have a solution, which is why we created the Real Tech Talk podcast in the first place. If you're coming with some bullshit, we're not interested, right? And that was exactly what he reiterated. He's saying that if you're not going to come and really show to a real estate person how this is working, it's not going to happen. And that's why we created Real Tech Talk, to give these guys the opportunity, that moment, to see if what they're doing is a medicine or a vitamin. And to have him then say that that has been the biggest issue in real estate is incredible, because the software is coming, right? If you come correct, the market wants it. So come on to Real Tech Talk. We want to hear from you. We want to hear if what you're doing is real or not. Even our homeboy LD believes in the same thesis. So let's go, baby. And as we always do when we're at the end, we say our favorite catchword. Boom shakalaka, people. Let's do this.